Conservative Voices Silenced. I'm Christine Sposato, and I'm excited to be your guide through the stories that matter. Stories of resilience, strength, and triumph in a world that doesn't always make space for conservative voices.
And I'm Elizabeth Smith, joining Christine in this journey. We know how it feels when your beliefs seem to be drowned out by the noise, but here on this podcast, we're turning up the volume.
That's right, Elizabeth, and we're creating a space where conservative voices can speak their truths, sharing the challenges they've faced and the victories they've celebrated.
Conservative Voices Silenced is not just a podcast, it's a movement that recognizes the diversity within conservatism and gives a platform to those who felt marginalized.
So whether you're a conservative looking for reliable stories or someone curious about the experiences of those with differing viewpoints, you're in the right place.
Get ready for an engaging ride as we dive into the trials and triumphs of conservatives navigating a progressive world. We invite you to join us on this journey of discovery, understanding, and most importantly, amplifying voices that deserve to be heard.
This is Conservative Voices Silenced, where silence ends and the conversation begins. Hi, welcome to Conservative Voices Silenced.
Hello, everybody. We have an amazing guest today. Her name is Kerry Slone. She is the founder of We the Female. She's a wife, mother, and a successful entrepreneur with a diverse background in multiple business ventures, as well as being an accomplished public speaker. In addition, Kerry is also a domestic violence survivor who has chosen, instead of being a victim, to become an advocate. Through the classes and networking, We the Female aids to redefine the culture of victim mentality through arming women with education, confidence, and self-defense options. Kerry strives to change the language and approach towards personal responsibility while working toward ending victim mentality culture through empowering people with the knowledge to prevent being a victim. The first step towards addressing this is recognizing it as a problem. The second step is taking proactive steps from preventing people from being victims in the first place. And We the Female is excited to help inspire change and actions towards these steps.
Wow.
So let's bring her on.
All right. Yeah, let's bring her on.
Let's bring our quickest intro.
Good.
All right. So we are here today with Kerry Slone from We the Female. Welcome, Kerry. I'm so excited you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Kerry.
Nice hoodie, by the way.
Thank you. I made sure to represent, and I also have the cup.
Oh, very nice. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I've had those for a couple of years now since we went to WAFT.
Yeah.
So, do you want to just kind of give a quick background, and then we'll go into some of the stuff you had on the page?
Well, about a little over 5 years ago, I ended up going viral on the internet, talking about a gun control law in Washington State that when you sign a waiver, when you sign your 4473, which is the background check that a lot of people think doesn't exist to purchase a gun, pistol, in Washington State, it's the law that was passed is now a waiver of your medical record, and the state can look at your medical record and decide whether or not they think that you should be able to purchase a gun or not. And of course, we all know that they're not looking for a broken arm or anything like that. So I spoke out about it as a domestic violence survivor, explaining that I went to therapy and did what I was supposed to do as a survivor of abuse, and I now have PTSD on my healthcare record, and I could potentially be denied the purchase of a firearm because of that in Washington State, therefore denying me the ability to defend myself from the abuser that actually stalked me. And that went viral, and I started We the Female, and realizing that there was definitely some components missing from women's firearm training and just defensive mindset training altogether. So we created our own program, and in short, we have a holistic approach to self-defense, and we call it Arming the Women with Education, Confidence, and Self-Defense.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
So your situation drove
what evolved afterward. You did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had always been, I've got a feedback off of something there. I'm not sure what's going on. I had always been very pro 2A. I actually wouldn't have considered, I was considered probably conservative leaning, but I certainly wouldn't consider myself a conservative at that time. I was actually, by a lot of standards, 6 years ago even, and prior to that, fairly what a lot of people in 2024 would consider fairly liberal with social issues. I've always been self-employed, so I've always been very fiscally conservative. But just that was one of the big things that kind of catapulted me forward, and seeing, more importantly, how women are weaponized against their best interests. And it actually happens from both sides. It actually, and the conservatives are weaponizing women in a whole different way. And that's just recently escalated in retaliation to the liberal weaponization of women. These whole movements with repealing the 19th Amendment and this anti-feminism movement, and these delusional women that think that they want to go back to living in these 19th century lives. And it just makes me crazy, because it's like telling these women, realize that this life, this delusional life that you think you want to live, your husbands could beat you and rape you, and there was no consequences of that legally, right? Like, so because the pendulum can't just settle in the middle and have balance, the conservative side has now weaponized women against their own best interest in retaliation to the feminazi left side. And the everyday average woman in America is in the middle and fighting this battle from both sides. And it's incredibly frustrating. And I take a lot of heat for being vocal on both sides, and I lose no sleep over it.
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Kerry. I grew up in the 70s, heavily influenced from the 60s as well. Well, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. But, now later in my life, I look back and I think we were really sold a bill of goods. And, so many women my age have just perpetually been unhappy and confused. And I think it's because the culture at that time was telling us that we should not be satisfied with traditional roles, that we should be out, burning our bras and making our way in the world and being pseudo men. And that didn't fit exactly. And I think this younger generation maybe is paving a more balanced approach to life, where you don't have to go all the way conservative to, like you're saying, Victorian lifestyle, but also every woman doesn't have to be a corporate CEO to have value in our world. Your message seems really important.
Thanks. Well, I wasn't a corporate CEO, but I was a very successful entrepreneur and commercial real estate investor, and I retired before 50 and moved to the South, where I now have a farm and I run my organization. But I don't like that women that choose to have a career or choose to have a career and a family are ostracized by the right. Which is, and that is where I think a lot of people, I'm a Gen Xer, I was born in 1974. And that is where the millennials and the Gen Z generations are really hurting themselves, because the conservatives on that side have gone so far to the other extreme that they too have forgotten, just like the left has forgotten, that the whole point of feminism is about choice. And giving women the ability to make the choice. My daughter is graduating from Oregon State University. She skipped her senior year of high school, and she's graduating with a science research degree. I worked and ran a business while my husband was primarily deployed, and prior to that, single mom when I left her dad, who was my abuser. And my kid turned out okay. So I really take major issue with this Andrew Tate, Hannah Davis, manosphere, we need to repeal the 19th Amendment crap that's going on from the conservative side. It straight pisses me off, especially from the women that are complaining a lot about the things that are going on politically, when ironically, the one thing that can give you a voice to fight back, especially in the gun world, right? Like, well, I'm a 2A absolutionist. What do you think helps you protect that the most? It's your 19th Amendment, you freaking turnip. Like, and they don't get it. And so it's an incredibly frustrating space to be in. But more importantly, what women aren't realizing is that this culture war that's being waged on women is coming from, they're being politicized and weaponized from both sides. And that is a huge problem, and they're not seeing it. And I don't think they're going to. Sadly, I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see more pushing from the left, especially in the blue states, to push women into not being married or living a traditional role if they choose to. And I think in the right, the states in the right, you're going to start seeing a lot more oppression of women and women being able to make choices for their own lives. And I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see it getting better anytime soon.
I'm quiet because I'm just pondering that.
I was waiting. I was like, are you gonna? Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think about it in that terms, right? And the reason people don't think about it in those terms is because the uncomfortable truth is because you're on one side or the other, and you're only looking at it from your side, as opposed to sitting in the center, taking yourself out of it, and looking at it from an objective space, to see that we're being a lot of the culture war is being fought over women. Look at, one side, you've got dudes wanting to be women,
Right.
because of the benefits of being a woman, in many capacities, especially our shoes, because we have great shoes. But on the other side, it's you have, because of that in retaliation, and because so many women have moved forward and been successful, the other side is pushing back. And a lot of that is being driven by the Andrew Tates and the Andrew. If you don't know who that is, you need to know who that is as a woman, because this dude is a straight misogynist. In fact, there's still charges that are floating around. He lives in Europe, with him, with sex trafficking of women. And so, there's some huge issues with this whole traditional lifestyle concept, because people have this delusional view of what that looks like, based on social media expectations. And and I understand why there wants to be there is a pushback against the left's narrative, that has been put forward for women, but they don't realize that this traditional role, A, isn't for every woman, and B, it's not it's not this Norman Rockwell painting that the perception that Instagram in particular and TikTok are notorious for the delusion of this, what's called the trad wife philosophy and culture. And it's it's work. And for me, I just sit back and I kind of laugh. I'm like, you guys sit there and you take pictures in your little farm, or your little, it's not even a farm, your little garden in your garden in your suburb, in your little linen dress, acting like you're homesteading. Well, let me know how that works for you when you're going hungry because you had a crop fail.
Right.
Or you had, and something happened and you don't know how to hunt or whatever. So it's a lot of work running a homestead. It's even more work than I expected it to be. And I grew up in farm country and with farm, on a farm. But it's just my husband and I doing it, and it's a lot of work. So I don't like to see how both sides have really created this problem for women, and neither side wants to address it, of course, because if they do, then that means that they have to actually come in the center and have some common sense and logic, and then that means that a political agenda can't be pushed to use women. Women are one of the most powerful forces on the planet. We have literally been the rise and fall of empires for millennia. Why women think they need to lower themselves to be equal to patriarchy is beyond me. When we run the show, and we always have run this show, whether it was, in front and being vocal, or from being the power behind the throne, there's both sides of the political spectrum want to control that voice. And it's crazy to me to see that women just don't see it.
Yeah, it is hard. I just have chickens, ducks, and we attempted a garden and it did not do well this past year, and that's hard. So
it is hard, and understanding how to modify it each year, and how to change it, and watch the climate and the temperatures and the, you have to watch all that because it absolutely makes a difference. And interestingly enough, chickens and ducks is they're fun and they're a lot of work, but it's not like actually growing crops. It's a whole different level, and we focused on that first. And what we do, because we're preppers, we've been preppers for years, and so we laugh at people that think that they laughed at us and poked fun at us for years until all of a sudden they couldn't find stuff in 2020 and are like, oh, now you're coming to me to borrow yeast because it wasn't just toilet paper that was, that went bad. But we focus on, and for any of your listeners that, if they're looking at getting into this, focus on beans first. Beans and grains, because those are the things that have almost an indefinite shelf life with long-term stability, and they're easy to grow with high yield. So, and if things go sideways, not if, when, because I think it's coming, they are a staple that you can sustain your family on for quite some time. So I also became an herbalist too, so I can make my own medicine.
Yes, that's.
So I take it very seriously, and because I won't let either side control me.
I can say this on my podcast because my husband knows it. The only reason I married him is because he is the ultimate prepper. And we get squirrel hunting, that when shit hits the fan, he's the guy that's going to save us all.
Yeah.
He knows it. I can say it. He's amazing. He's amazing.
And that is a very, if we really want to be honest, that is a very traditional mindset for women, that we found men that could help take care of us when things went bad or what have you. And I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. But I think it's also incredibly naive and ignorant for people to think that a woman can't do it on her own if she didn't have to. I could do this on my own if I absolutely needed to. It would be a hell of a lot harder and a lot more work. And I don't like killing spiders. So, and there's certain things on the farm that I don't like doing, but I could, or I could hire it out or trade somebody crop. I could make it happen on my own. I've been very self-sufficient for many years, but having a partner that you can do it with most definitely makes it easier. And I have zero problem with some of those traditional male roles, like taking out the garbage.
Right. Yes.
So, I've been there, done that. I could do it. But like you said, I'd prefer not to do it myself.
Too old. I'm too old, man. I'll be 50 this year. I am too old to be trying to do some of this shit on my own, man. Like, I don't... I can, but I'm over it. I don't need to put that kind of energy into it on my own anymore. So I'm okay with having a partner that can help me do these things. And is he, now that I retired and I don't create an income from my nonprofit, everything that I make goes back into my organization. So we live on his retirement income, and that's part of why we moved as well. Because the cost of living in Southeast Georgia is significantly lower than it is in Washington State. We bought a beautiful 30-acre property for, a lot less money than we were able to sell our house for in a suburb in Washington. And so these were decisions that we made together that were conscious decisions for lifestyle changes, to be able for me to continue to teach and do the things that I do, but to be able to create a self-sustained lifestyle as well. And a lot of people don't, and of all ages and all generations, don't want to give up those luxuries and those conveniences. And unfortunately, if you're serious about wanting to be self-sustaining, those are things that you're really going to have to address. I used to own 300 pairs of high heels. I own Louboutins, I own Prada. I own a Chanel handbag. You know what that does for me now? It sits in my closet, because what am I going to do? Go out and, spread fertilizer in my raised garden beds with my stinking Chanel bag on? Maybe I should. Maybe that would be some fun. Go out in a dress, and maybe that's the IG aesthetic that I need to put out there.
There you go. Yeah.
with my gun, with my AR on my back or something, right? But I mean, the point is that what we think we need is really not what you need. We need food, we need a roof over our heads, we need clothing on our backs. It does not need to be a label. It does not need to be, these things. Don't get me wrong, I work for those things and I love them, and I'm glad that I put myself in a position after growing up very, very poor and even being homeless at one point in my 20s that I worked to get to those places. So to me, they're symbols of achievements for me, but they don't define who I am. And they certainly, when it all kicks off, it's certainly not going to, we're going to eat it. I mean, it's kind of pointless. So, but we still live in this culture, particularly among millennials and Gen Zers, where there's Hollywood and social media in particular has them, completely convinced that they need to have this materialism in their lives. And so therefore they have to work, right? And so this is perpetuating that side from the left, or they don't need anything at all. And you just need to depend on your husband and be part of your husband's identity. And that's not okay either.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Would you like to
I'm
go?
the uncomfortable truther, just so you know. Like, I know Beth has known me for a while. I know, Christine, you're a little bit new to me. Like, I put out the stuff. This is the thing, right? This is absolutely, if there was one quote that completely typifies everything what I'm about and all my platforms, it is, from George Carlin, everybody loves your honesty till you're honest with them, and then you're an asshole. So, and that is some really uncomfortable truths that a lot of women just don't want to talk about. But we can't try to bring some balance for women until we do start having these conversations and start addressing the weaknesses, not just on our opponent's side, but also on our side as well.
Would you like to go into more detail about your organization, the We the Female?
There's several things that we do at We the Female. One of the primary things is that I travel around the country. I live in a van. While I do it, I sleep at Love's truck stops, and I teach in different states, providing firearms training for women. A lot of people are out there. There's a lot of great instructors out there. Our approach deals primarily with the psychology behind how women learn, especially if they've had negative experiences with firearms or have had violence in their lives. So one of the things we specialize in are like domestic violence victims and helping them get over the fear of firearms, or just women that have had, negative experiences. A lot of times that negative experience is the fact that grandpa handed her a 30-30 when she was 8 years old, and she shot it and it knocked her on her butt. And now she may not be anti-gun, but she doesn't want anything to do with it herself because, of the experience she had. So our goal is to help women understand that the Second Amendment is far more reaching than just shall not be infringed. And particularly for women, that it is important for them to understand that the Second Amendment allows them the ability to protect themselves and their babies. So when I teach a firearms class, I just actually posted about this today. Obviously, I want to help women overcome their fear of the firearm, and I want them to learn how to safely and responsibly operate the firearm. However, one of the things that I do when I'm in the classroom with them by design is piss them off about the laws and help them understand how those laws are negatively impacting them every day. Most people, but especially women, don't get involved in politics. They don't get involved in all this kind of stuff. They let their husbands handle it. It blows my mind. And this is one of the huge, huge failures of the Republican Party and the conservatives. If you get out talk to average people, go out into the country where more conservatives live, there are significantly less women, conservative women or Republican women registered to vote than there are liberal women. And that is a failure on the part of conservatives and Republicans to not harness that, whereas the Democrat liberal side was brilliant at the long game. Politics are a marathon. It's not a sprint. And Democrats have been far better at it than Republicans, conservatives had, and still are. And they saw the power that women have early, and they seized it. And it was smart. It was very smart of them to do it. I don't agree with it, but it was smart. When I was working in Washington State to repeal the law, we tried to get it repealed with a ballot petition, that the law that threw me in all this. And we would stand outside the gun stores and the sporting goods stores and so on, and to get the petition signed to get it on the ballot. We were blown away, disturbingly so, at how many females would approach. Their husbands would sign, but they weren't registered to vote. We had to either get them registered to vote, or they still wouldn't even bother to vote at all. And that was incredibly concerning to me. I'm at least 25% of them were not registered to vote or being involved. You want to see shit change? Piss off women and get them involved. I mean, look at what we're seeing in the schools, right? We're seeing the big shift in schools and stuff because they're pissed off about their kids. But why aren't you pissed off about everything else?
Mm-hmm.
Because it all ties together.
Yep.
So this is part of my goal in my classes, is to help them understand how those laws are affecting their lives personally, so that they can go out and start using their voices, because they won't get involved unless and that's most everybody, right? I mean, that's kind of see, I'm on a rant now, but this is kind of the double-edged sword of what our country is founded on. I'm a huge history nerd. I'm married to a published historian, United States history. I am a particularly U.S. women's history, and I special emphasis in Revolutionary War. If you saw my library, it's. I got my tour of Peacefield, where Abigail and John lived, for free because I knew more than the tour guide. On my birthday last year, they're like, we didn't know that, and I was like, you probably should. So they gave me I actually was full. The tour was full. They actually added me and my husband to the tour and gave it to me for free because I knew so much about them. I chose to spend my 49th birthday in Abigail Adams' home. So big on that. And one of the blessings we have in guaranteed to us in our Constitution is the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Well, my happiness is different than yours, and it's different than yours. So therefore, the double-edged sword is that it also creates a self-focused society. Because I'm pursuing my happiness, you're pursuing yours, and that's awesome, right? Because it gives us the right to be able to do that. However, it also does not create an active or an advocacy culture at all until somebody is personally affected, and now they have to get involved to protect their own happiness and liberty. So that is my goal in my classes, is to piss these women off, help them understand. I do it all the time. I get a lot of centrist to liberal-leaning women in my classes. And the minute that I let them know how this is affecting their lives personally, and because I don't speak from that NRA far right kind of space, they listen. And once I have them in and they're willing to listen, because I don't speak from this, what the perception of the gun rights narrative is, they listen to what I'm saying, and then they're pissed. To the point where I've had liberal women completely flip on guns and I did some campaign advisory in Washington a couple of years ago for a couple of dumbasses that ran up there that wouldn't listen. I'm like, why do you have me working for you if you're not going to listen? I mean, it was a joke. I was so pissed at them. But to the point where, watching how bad they were, I'm convinced that the Washington State Republican Party is bought off by the Democrats. That's how bad it is up there. I mean, that's how ignorant these women were and how much they refused to listen to common sense. It's a whole other conversation. But anyway, so a couple of women, they would come and take my classes. One in particular, I completely flipped her. And 2 days after my class, she text messaged me and she said, I just went to these Republican candidates' pages. She's never voted Republican in her life. And she said, if these women want women like me to vote for them, this is what they need to do to change their message on their social media and their websites. Did they do it? Nope. I'm like, you could have marketed that completely. And I told them that. I'm like, you could be marketing this different and actually winning over those centrist to libertarian or more left-leaning, but not far left women. But y'all are, nope, you wouldn't do it because that's not what the party told you to do. Well, how'd that work for you?
Kerry, I have a question. So I was talking to a 30-something-year-old woman who we were talking about gun rights, and she said, so someone goes into a kindergarten class with a gun and shoots a bunch of kindergartners, or a kindergartner brings a gun to class in his or her backpack and shoots some other kids. Tell me if it's not worth banning guns to save the lives of those kids in kindergarten. How would you answer that question to that 30-something-year-old woman?
Well, 94% of all mass shootings, and school shootings obviously are classified as mass shootings, happen in gun-free zones, meaning that they're places where guns are either through policy, through independent policy, or legally from the state level are banned. Yet they're still getting the guns into this campus. There's a huge cognitive dissonance with that, where they think that if the guns are banned, then these won't happen. But yet guns are banned in every place that these are happening, or almost every place that it's happening. And so it's not the gun. One of the questions I always throw back at them is, why are we not addressing the security? You know, there's never been a mass shooting in an urban school. You know why there's never been a mass shooting in an urban school? Because they have single point entry and locked doors. Mm-hmm. As opposed to multiple entry, open campuses, and all of these things. So, okay, so let's support their argument that we want to keep a gun-free zone. Personally, I believe we should have armed security and allow teachers that are trained to carry on, because it's amazing what happens when somebody is over 60% of all active shooter situations have been that were reported to the FBI. Over 60% of them were stopped by a legally armed citizen. But they hide that data. The politicians hide that data from us on purpose.
Yep.
And the FBI intentionally mislabels certain shootings to fit their narrative. So John Lott is just there's been Crime Prevention Research Center just put out a study last year on that, and it was a huge news because of how he was able to kind of go back in and show people how they intentionally, mislabel. I'm convinced it was intentional. Mislabel these particular shootings. So one of the things that usually just pisses them off and they block you, because they really don't want to have a conversation because they're so emotionally charged by it, is, why aren't we addressing better security in the schools? Let's take the guns out of it. Okay, you still don't want teachers or armed security? Cool. There's other things that can be done to absolutely end school shootings, but the schools don't want to have those conversations, because at the end of the day, if we're being really honest about it, they're going to keep and we all know who they are. It's the big people, the big elites, are going to keep killing our babies until they take away our guns. The two biggest pawns for gun control in the United States are domestic abuse victims and children. And that's why I actively work in the space that I do, to help domestic violence victims get over that fear and start to fight for their right to defend themselves with a firearm. And of course, with children, you teach them safety at an early age and they don't know any different. But there's all kinds of conversations around security and safety, particularly with our kids, that don't even need to involve a gun. But that's both sides always, resort to that extreme, as opposed to looking at it like my organization does, from a holistic approach to self-defense and self-awareness, which is why we designed our program the way we have.
Yep. So you're working on a training tour project. Is that something that you are going to try to get to each state, or are you going to start with counties?
So this is our third year doing it. Last year, we taught in California. We taught in Washington, Georgia, and we taught a children's class in Georgia, or helped teach a class. And then we taught in the Chicago area. In Chicago, we provided the financing for over 24 women. I think it was like 35 women over 2 classes that couldn't afford training, because that's another thing my organization does, is we provide financial aid for single mothers, domestic violence survivors, and elders that can't afford training. We won't deny any woman in need But we prioritize our limited amount of funds for those that we feel are more in need, abuse survivors, single moms, particularly living in cities, or elderly ladies, that may be widowed or they've become their husband's caregiver and they're on fixed incomes and what have you. So we provide the financial aid or the training ourselves, if I can't get to them, to be able to help them as well. So this is our third year doing the training tour. So far we have our Washington date scheduled. I'm going up to interview a range in Tennessee here in about a week and a half. We're going to take a look at that. So it looks like we may be adding to Tennessee. If you're familiar with Rod of Iron Ministries, I know you are. I know you know who they are. Rod of Iron Ministries is the kooky Korean guy that wears the ammo crown.
Yes.
The church where they wear the ammo crown. Yeah. So they're internet friends of mine. And so I've been in touch with their Tennessee, because they have chapters of their church in Tennessee and in Pennsylvania. And so I'm going to be talking with them further, and it looks like we'll be doing some training in Tennessee. We're going to be expanding into Tennessee, hopefully some more classes here in Georgia, expanding our reach here in Georgia. It looks like we have a sponsor actually for our classes here in Georgia.
Very nice.
Moss Pawn and Gun, which is exciting. Super excited to be working with them. And then maybe Texas and Arizona. So I've taught in Arizona in the past as well. So I'm willing to go anywhere if somebody is willing to help sponsor to bring the class there. It's just a matter of, a lot of people say that they will, but it takes work, right? And it takes follow through to do that. So a lot of people have good intentions, but aren't able to follow through. And I can't do that locally for people. I need people to help me bring those classes there. And if somebody's willing to sponsor the class, $1,800, I can teach 12 women for free. And I bring everything. I bring the guns. I bring the ammo. I bring eye pro, ear pro, targets. I provide everything. All I need is the range. One person to volunteer to assist to help me on the line. And we train these women for free. So, I could probably even do it for less in certain states. Certain states are a little bit trickier. But if we get the right donations like ammo and such, it helps. But so we're hoping to see some sponsorships this year. I'm really being active to try to get some sponsorships, because if we can get enough sponsorships, we can reduce the cost of our classes, or if we get enough, which I don't see happening in this economy, but in my perfect world, we would get enough sponsorship dollars that we could actually do the entire training tour for free. But that would be $30,000. So I don't see that happening anytime soon. But it would be
big money listeners.
I just put it out there in the universe and maybe
put it out there. Big money listeners, listen.
That's right.
Come on.
I am a 501c3, or I'm not. My organization is, so it is tax. It is a tax write-off, and you are helping women. But for women that do pay for training, because we do have women, especially in Washington, I teach a lot up there because I used to live there. Every dime that comes in, even through women who pay for their training, goes back into our financial aid fund for women that can't afford training. So I have literally created a system where women are supporting women, because that actually matters to me. A lot of women talk about that shit, but and Beth can tell you, I am not very well liked in the Second Amendment community, for lack of it, whatever that means, because of the pushback that I give against how women are treated in this industry. So because a lot of women talk about being there to support women, but it's all talk for clout chasing or attention. I am truly about helping women find their strength and find their power, because you get these women powerful and they're unstoppable. And that's what we need to do. We just need to have them fighting for the things that matter, like their self-defense.
Right.
Kerry, what you're talking about, bringing the conservatives and the liberals together, uniting women, is such a unique message and such a beautiful message, and something that really needs to be supported out there in the world, that we do have a unique sisterhood that needs to be supported regardless of the political philosophies or beliefs, that we have a lot in common and we really need to support each other. And bless you, Kerry, for
Thank
doing
you.
that and having the voice to do that, and the language and the passion and the soul to touch women and be able to do that. What a gift. What an amazing gift.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. It comes from 30 years of being in the beauty industry. When I say I was in the beauty industry, what I really mean is I was in the business of women, right? I know how I know how we think. Call me crazy, but there's a difference between us, men and women, gender wise, and how we think and operate and those types of things. But I've been able to take that 30 years of life experience working with women and having I believe it's a gift, is I have crazy good interpersonal skills. I know how to shift and adjust my conversations. In fact, I've had people watch me do it where I've walked into a place and engaged in a woman in conversation, and she's like a far left feminazi, and I've been able to resonate with her, even though I don't agree with her. But because I believe in women's rights and understanding where we come from, I can speak their language and then walk in very next door. I did this with a few people. I actually did it with John in Montana, and he was blown away. And then to turn around and walk into a place with a far right conservative and be able to chat with her too, but never waver on my centrist mentality, because it's not about politics, it's about women. Mm-hmm. And women need to wake up and realize that they're being used from both sides. It's not good.
Yep.
Am I messing with you today a little bit, Christine? Are you like, whoa?
No, I was just thinking about Hillary Clinton. Yeah. I just thought, who would I really have a hard time connecting with? And that was
certain women are just not worth your time. Like Kamala, I've confronted Kamala Harris, and that went about as well as you would expect. But what was interesting,
I've seen the video.
What helped me kind of get to the space that I'm in is it wasn't her; it was a couple of her little fangirls from Moms Demand Action. She was speaking in Washington State when she was running for president on gun control, so 4 years ago. And I ended up confronting her. She shut me down, of course. I mean, there's other videos out there of her doing the same thing to other women as well. It's definitely a playbook she has. But afterward, I was in the restroom of this venue, was washing my hands, and these two women were gaga-ing over her, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at them and I said, it's really unfortunate that she wouldn't talk to a domestic violence survivor about red flag laws. And that's all I said. Didn't say I was pro-gun, anti-gun, just didn't say it. And they immediately went into their talking points, making excuses for her and so on and so forth. And I said, well, I'm the domestic violence survivor she wouldn't talk to. And they immediately went into needing to show me how empathetic and sympathetic they were to me being a survivor. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe that happened to you. Are you okay? And that is awful. I can't believe that man did that to you, blah, blah, blah. And so at that point, I looked at them and I said, well, those red flag laws that you guys support would keep me from being able to buy a gun to defend myself against the man that abused and stalked me because I have PTSD in my medical. And they were nonplussed.
Yeah.
Literally slack-jawed, speechless. So of course, that was my moment, right? It was my mic drop moment. I walked out, leaving them with their heads going, oh shit, right? They didn't know what to think. I ended up getting followed by an ABC reporter, actually, out the bathroom, who stood with me for about 30, 40 minutes talking to me about it. I recorded it just in case she wanted to try to go sideways on me, but she didn't, which is fine. But that was a big deal. But as I was driving home and I was processing what had happened, it hit me that one of the biggest mistakes that conservatives continue to make is that they continue to fight forward with this facts over feelings bullshit. They need to stop with that. You are dealing with, first of all, an entire culture, a political affiliation, and now generational cultures of emotionally driven people. Yeah. So they're not going to hear, no matter how much fact and logic is there, they're not going to hear it straight away. Okay, they're not. Second, again, who are the biggest people that are weaponized for things like gun control? It's women, right? Women are one of the biggest fighters for gun control. Domestic violence victims are weaponized just for the martyrs, right? They're made martyrs for gun control, women and children. Or domestic violence victims and children are made martyrs for gun control. How do women typically think? We are typically more emotionally driven and process things. While we can process logic and facts, obviously, my daughter way more logical than I am, but she's a scientist. But we tend to move forward more with our heart than we do with our heads. And conservatives aren't speaking the right language. If you truly want these people to change how they're thinking, you need to use emotion, but not get emotional. This is my secret. So I'm literally giving you guys my Pillsbury $1 million recipe right now for advocacy. This is it. But you guys have to, not just you, ladies, but anybody's listening. This is how you do it. And yes, it is that black and white. I am straight telling you, this is how you do it. Because I do it all year long and it's successful. The minute that you can push that emotional button so that they can see that you empathize with them in any way, they're going to be more willing to listen when you give them the facts. And then stop trying to pound it in their head to win the argument. Plant the seed, sprinkle some water on it. They will come back to you because now you're not the crazy conservative or the gun nut, if it's gun related. This is a general conversation about anything political. But the minute that they will, and then they will come back to you, and then they'll come back to you, and then they'll come back to you until, like me, I had a far left feminazi. I put 55 years old, never touched a gun in her life, hated guns, hated that I was getting involved in guns. She wanted to stop being a client of my salon because she found out I carried 5 years into being a client. She found out I carried a gun every day. But she liked me and trusted me and knew I wasn't the gun nut, right? So moving forward, another year talking to her slowly. And then she saw a speech that I gave on the Capitol lawn in DC, where I described what had happened to me when my abuser beat me up. And it pissed her off. She was angry because it was pretty graphic. I got pretty graphic by design. Mm-hmm. And she looked at me and she said, and excuse my language, but she says, I would have been shot him.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, would you? And she stopped and realized what she said. And she processed it a minute. She goes, yeah, I would have. And I said, do you realize that most of those laws that you're supporting would keep me from doing that?
Yeah.
And she just went quiet and I let it go. I let it go. A week later, I happened to coincidentally run into her and I was in my workout clothes and I tend to print in the summertime a little here. They don't care like where I live now. Like it's a Tupperware party. It's like a show and tell. When you're carrying a gun, they're like, oh. But in Washington State, you gotta be a little bit more careful about it. But she could see my gun printing underneath. She didn't know what it was initially. She goes, what's underneath your, my thin workout shirt? I said, it's my gun. Because I would go on 3-4 mile walks. I'm like, I don't go unarmed. And I said, do you want to see it? And she stopped and she says, I do. So I took it out, I cleared it, locked the slide back, and I handed it to her. She had never had a gun in her hand. I said, do you want me to take you out, teach you how to shoot? She goes, I think I do. Because nice. I showed her it wasn't about the redneck NRA shall not be infringed bullshit. I approached it from an emotional space as not only a survivor, but also as a woman to woman about this is about the crime rate getting worse. And this is about us being able to defend ourselves. Screw that redneck NRA, bullshit. Let's talk about you and I being able to defend ourselves from being raped.
Right.
It works. It absolutely works. And it's not just guns. It works for everything. But you've got to create that relationship, become a resource, and don't be an adversary. Believe me, it's hard. And I do not, like, one of the best compliments I ever got was somebody who said to me, Kerry never strays away from a social media bar fight. And I don't, because I know that, right, you can read, and we all know it. There's certain people that that you can get to, and there's certain people you're not going to get to. You're not going to get to a troll. You're not going to get to somebody who's so far out right. That they can't hear it. Although I have flipped that. I have screenshots showing where I've had a bunch of liberal men. Well, what kind of, screwed up? I just posted it, actually. I don't know if you saw that, where the guy was like, I don't know what kind of shitty environment you grew up in that you feel like you need a gun. Yeah. I said, well, I was a domestic violence survivor and blah, blah, blah. And I went through, and he says, well, I understand why you need a gun. I screenshot it. But it's not the first time it's happened. So those conversations can straight out change the narrative for gun rights, especially for abuse victims. We just have to stop allowing people, particularly men on the conservative side, we need to stop them from being chauvinistic assholes, especially on social media, to women, particularly to abuse victims. With their liberal men, don't sit there and go, well, I guess you must have. What are some of the quotes that I have? Because I have them screenshotted. She must like getting beat if she stays as long as she did, and all this. That all comes from the conservative side. That does not come from the liberal side. They turn into weak beta, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, let me help hide you and hug you on the liberal side instead of empowering and learning self-defense. But the other side, straight up, and Beth knows because she's seen it. She's followed me for years. And so she can tell you that this is the case. They're terrible. Well, guess what? Every time a dude or a woman, some women do it too, every time you say something like that, not only do you turn away a woman from wanting to be active to fight for liberties, particularly gun rights, in some cases, you could get an abuse victim killed because she won't come forward and try to get away because she sees you as a representative of everything that she's trying to get away from. But you can also turn them into gun control supporters if you're not careful. And so I believe in freedom of speech. I don't want to suppress anybody, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't think about some of the shit you say before you say it, and especially when it comes to abuse victims, because it's a whole different psychology that you have to deal with.
Right. Wow. You're doing great work, Kerry. Holy cow.
Yes.
Wow.
So I think we're about ready to wrap it up. Did you want to put out your information on how to be contacted, how people can donate to your organization? And then we'll make sure we tag everything in the video.
I'm on all the social medias, We the Female. I'm also Stilettos and Shotguns. It's a little bit spicier, a little bit more controversial, but you find me Stilettos and Shotguns on pretty much all the social medias. On X, or formerly known as Twitter, I'm the real_SNS. You can go to wethefemale.org and donate. 100% of everything that comes in through donations goes back into our financial aid fund to help women that can't afford training. Amazing. Because no one, but especially domestic violence victims and single mothers and our elders, should ever be denied the right of self-defense because they can't afford the training. So we want to make sure that we can help create that gateway to help them get that self-defense training that they need.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
Do you still have the discount through, is it Blackout Coffee? Is that still going?
So if you go to I don't know if the link is on, I can see if our link is on our website, but if you go to my social media, particularly Instagram, there's a link in my link tree. And Blackout Coffee, when you purchase through my link, it's kind of like their affiliate program, the way people get their commissions, but my commission doesn't go to me. Blackout Coffee agreed they give us more of a commission, but it goes directly to our financial aid fund for women that can't afford it. So Blackout Coffee is one of our partners. We also have some great partners that have donated the guns. Taurus donated pistols for our training. We have ammo donors. We have several different rifle companies that have manufactured and donated rifles to us as well, because we do a destigmatization of AR class for women. And Mossberg donated shotguns to us to help teach women how to use shotguns. So I've been very grateful to have a lot of support from the manufacturers in the firearm industry to help arm women. But unfortunately, as great as that is, unfortunately, it doesn't help to be able to pay for those training fees across the country when we can't get to train those women ourselves.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I know I went off on a rant there. You guys just kind of let me,
you
opened the door and just let me go. So
yep.
We love our guest rants.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
We love our guests' rants.
Oh, good. Well, good. I'm glad that it worked out and that it wasn't too much for y'all.
Nope, that was great.
You were great, Kerry. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me, ladies. Y'all take care.
Thanks,
Thank you.
too.
You too. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Kerry was terrific. This was my first experience with her. You've known her before.
Known her for a few years now. We met through Instagram, just commented on one of her posts at random, didn't know who she was at that point, and she replied to my comment, and then we became friends. And we actually met in person for the first time, only once, but for the first time. My husband surprised me with 2-day training at WOFT. It's WOFT. It's in Florida near Orlando, and they do self-defense training there. So we got to train together for 2 days, and it was awesome.
Well, we did a really broad overview in this interview. It wasn't even an interview. We just kind of let her go. And she is so well spoken and so knowledgeable about so many different things. We didn't really even get to go into the self-defense part.
You're right. Yep. So I think it's a good idea to have her back. She'd be happy to come back, I'm sure. So
I would love to have her back and go in more in depth into some of the topics that we just touched on. Our listeners didn't hear it, but we continued on for about 45 minutes after we quit
yeah, I should have
recording.
recorded that too.
It was amazing.
It was good.
We had a great conversation with her. And so if the listeners have specific requests of things that they would like to hear more in-depth commentary about, or, she researches, we could provide more information and bring a lot more to the table. So if you listeners have things that you would like specifically for her to touch on or address, email us comments at conservativevoicessilence.com, and we'll bring her back and we'll talk about those topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can comment on Rumble. I try to pay attention to the comments there and reply back. So if you just comment something there, please let us know what you want to hear, because we will absolutely bring her back.
Yes. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, this has been a great show.
Yes.
Come back next time.
Yep. We'll have another one next week.
All right.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
All right. Okay.